শুভ দুপুর আমার নাম আকিল কুরেশি আমি জাপান থেকে এসেছি Good afternoon everyone my name is Akil Qureshi I'm from Japan and I will speak on inclusive early warning and climate change impact on persons with disabilities. First of all, I would like to thank ABU for giving me this opportunity to speak here. And climate change affects everyone's lives, but when it comes to person with disability, it's very severe and in some point it's a matter of life and death. So its affect like accessible emergency broadcasting may not be available. In some cases, the accessible transportation is also not available. Access to food is very limited, and it's also very difficult in countries, so many countries, to evacuate person with disability if they are using medical equipment and if they have very powerful electronic wheelchair. So why we need inclusive early warning? Because 10% of the global population live with some form of disability, which means 1 billion people around the world live with disability, and 80% live in developing countries. And 60 billion person with disability live in Bangladesh, which means 10% of the population. So the mortality rate of person with disability is comparatively very higher as compared to person without disabilities. People with vision disability, they don't see any warning. People with hearing disability, they can't hear any warning. And people with cognitive disability, they can't understand the warning at all. So the challenge is lack of inclusive early warning system, information about the status of evacuation, shelters, and transportation is not in accessible format. Breaking news stories are not always captioned, and press conferences do not include sign language interpretation. And if it's televised, the interpreter are not included as part of the TV display. So what is inclusive early warning system? The provision of timely and accurate information in different alternative formats that allow individual, including person with disability, to take action to avoid and reduce their risk and prepare for effective response. These are the methods for delivering of inclusive early warnings: sign language interpretation, open captioning, closed captioning, video description, flags, siren strobe, volunteers, electronic signs, and community-based warning, and easy-to-understand disaster contents. And there are some more video relay services. Landline and mobile phones can be accessed via screen reader software. Cell broadcasting is also can be accessed via different screen readers. Caption telephone, disaster warning mobile apps, and email and internet. So Bangladesh government signed the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability in 2007 and ratified in 2008. And I'm very shocked to see there is nothing for me. If I want to evacuate from this building, if I'm staying in my room, and if I want to evacuate from this building, I think I will not survive here, because there is no universal design principles actually apply, and I cannot evacuate by myself. So Article 11 says situation of risk and humanitarian emergency, which protect persons with disability and their safety in disaster situations. Article 9 is talk about accessibility, which means all emergency services has to be accessible for persons with disability, including early warning communications. And this is very advanced, but in some countries now, they are also making the cloud-based information for persons with disability, their individual information, so that first responder can access that sort of information and provide services. Stay close. Yeah. And cloud-based DDR, health records, medical files and history, disability data, documents about emergency, first responders, shelter, and emergency information. So I strongly recommend each individual with disability have their individual disaster plan, including how they will communicate in the disaster. So they should make their buddy list, how they react. They should also have some backup for their wheelchair batteries or some medical equipment, and how to create a personal contact list in emergency, and also consider any animals that may be assistance to them. These are some best practices. This is one in America. It has caption radio, so people with hearing disability can get the warning. This one in New Zealand, they have disaster preparedness in sign language as well as in closed captioning and open captioning. And this one, the NHK, very good example of sign language interpretation as well as the closed captioning. And this is my last slide, and adopt all measures necessary to ensure that early warning system and disaster risk reduction program are accessible for persons with disabilities and meet universal design principle and UNCRPD, and including provision for access of alternative communication, and implement WCAG, Web Content Accessibility Guideline 2.0. Anek dhanyawad. Thank you.
Akhil, once again, many thanks, many thought-provoking comments there. Hashimoto-san is still with us in Japan and would like to rejoin us for a closing comment. Hashimoto-san, the audience are listening.
Thank you. I just would like to provide some additional information on the previous question. The gentleman asked me about number of cameras to be linked in the disaster coverage regarding the IP camera, Internet Protocol camera. And in the case of disasters like typhoon or torrential rains, the cell phone network is working just as usual. So the number of camera has no limit. You can link any number of cameras. But in the case of big earthquake, like Great East Japan earthquake, as I told you, the cell phone network breaks down. Then in that case, the camera has no connection with the cell phone network. So we need our special communication equipment on the site. So we have some limit. For example, usually only 3-4 cameras can be linked to the one antenna, one small antenna on the site. So it depends on the case of disasters. Thank you very much.
Hashimoto-san, I know that you have another important meeting you have to join. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your contribution today. Much appreciated. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you very much.
And before we pick up on the second part of Akinori Hashimoto's presentation, are there any immediate questions that you would like to ask Akhil? Whilst we have, can we have a microphone down here, please? Microphone at the front here, please. This gentleman here. An immediate question to Akhil before we move on. Thank you.
Akhil is a very good presentation. I want to one thing clear. How it's work, cloud-based information? Can you give me clear this one? How even authentic information you are telling about cloud-based information?
What is that? Sorry, I'm sorry, we didn't quite get the question.
You are mentioning about cloud-based information.
Yes, cloud-based information.
Yeah.
So you
can you give me a clear? I not understand how it's work. Cloud-based information. Is it authentic information? Is cloud-based information?
Yeah, okay, so in some countries, for example, I went to UAE, and the UAE government collect person with disability information, like, for example, what kind of disability I have. In case of emergency, what is my needs and what are my requirements. So that data can be put in cloud, and the first responder can see that information and then help person with disabilities. Is it clear to you?
Okay, thank you very much. Well, thank you very much indeed for that question. We shall move on, therefore, with the second part of the presentation, which will look at case studies. So this will last, I think, just under 15 minutes, and we'll then immediately move on to the next session. So whilst this is being played, could I ask the panelists for the next session, which is session 8, to please come and join me on stage. Thank you.
Now, let's take a look at the sample of disaster broadcasting. This is the case of an earthquake and tsunami warning last November. Please watch the first 3 minutes of our emergency news. The earthquake early warning was issued right after the morning news program started.
緊急地震速報です。強い揺れに警戒してください。緊急地震速報です。強い揺れに警戒してください。
It warned to watch out for strong quakes in 5 prefectures of Fukushima, Miyagi, Yamagata, Ibaraki, and Tochigi. We broadcast the picture of a robot camera in Iwaki City of Fukushima Prefecture, which was one of the 5 prefectures in the warning. At this moment, the precise epicenter was not detected, but our presenter called for attention by saying that we could have tsunami if the epicenter was in the sea. This earthquake occurred near Fukushima Prefecture. The situation of Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant became a focus of attention. We broadcast the picture of the power plant immediately.
揺れが強い地域の皆さん、落ち着いてください。今、震度の情報が入りました。
In 1 minute, first information of seismic intensity came in. The maximum intensity was 5 lower. Data of seismic intensity came in one after another through the online network with JMA and were added to the TV screen in real time. Usually, it takes 1 to 2 minutes to start an emergency news, but we didn't waste any second because the earthquake happened during the news program.
今、新しい情報です。津波警報が出ました。津波警報が出ました。
In 2 minutes, JMA issued a tsunami warning. We conducted the emergency warning broadcast, sending beep sound to activate the TV and radio with the function. This is what we broadcast for the first 3 minutes in the emergency news. After this, NHK started to call evacuation to the viewers near the sea. The presenter spoke in a relatively strong tone, like this.
津波はすぐに来ます。
Tsunami is coming soon. The height is expected to be 3 meters. Evacuate to a higher place as much as possible. Go up on a hill, go up to a high building, or escape from the coast as far as possible. Never stop or return. Urge people around you to evacuate and tell them tsunami warning is issued. Please recall the memories of the Great East Japan earthquake and evacuate now to protect your life. In 54 minutes, the first hit of tsunami, 60 centimeter high, was observed at Onahama Port. In 1 hour and a half, our helicopter arrived at the port in the tsunami hit area. The cameraman reported that no damage could be confirmed from the sky. In about 2 hours, our crew started live reporting on the ground near the sea. In this case, it took us much time to start live reporting because the earthquake occurred in early morning and most of our staff were at home. The tsunami warning was removed in the morning, but NHK continued the emergency news until afternoon for safety. The total duration of the emergency news this time was nearly 7 hours. Next, I would like to talk about how we disseminate disaster information. It is important to provide detailed and personalized information through the multiple media platforms. In case of major disasters, NHK allocates all channels for the disaster broadcasting. For example, we broadcast primary news on the general TV, while we broadcast lifeline information on the educational TV. We broadcast primary news on Radio 1 and provide foreign language service on Radio 2 for foreigners living in Japan. When we provide disaster information on TV, we often use the system called L-shaped screen. It reduces the size of TV pictures and secures a L-shaped space for scrolling various disaster-related information, such as damage, traffic, lifeline, and so on. In Japan, when the TV broadcasting was digitalized, big screen HD TV became popular, which can show small characters clearly. By using this L-shaped screen, we provide much more detailed information than the regular superimposing. Recently, NHK makes greater effort to provide disaster information on the internet. This is the NHK News web on September 20th last year, when a strong typhoon landed on Japan. It contained vast amount of detailed disaster information. For example, these are the evacuation notices issued by the local governments. They show the area that should be evacuated town by town. Users can search necessary information on this detailed website by themselves. On the other hand, this is simple but smart way of providing news and disaster information via smartphones. We have just started to provide this new application last year. By using the GPS function, it shows the information of your current location or pre-registered area. Important information such as weather warning or tsunami information is sent via push notification service. This screen shows the current situation of rainfall provided by JMA. The intensity is indicated by colors with 250-meter mesh. It also shows the predicted rainfall for 1 hour from now. You can easily check the approaching risks around yourself. In short, NHK tries to provide disaster information in a user-friendly manner by using all available platforms, including TV, radio, and the internet. Finally, I would like to talk about a lesson which NHK learned from the Great East Japan earthquake. That is to strengthen the backup function of broadcasting to prepare for the future. In Tokyo, a major earthquake of magnitude 7 class is expected with a probability of 70% in the next 30 years. If it happens, NHK headquarters may lose its function. So, NHK has built up a backup function in Osaka, which is 500 kilometers away from Tokyo. If the headquarters goes down, Osaka Station will take over the nationwide broadcasting through a satellite. On the other hand, in the southern part of Japan, a major earthquake of magnitude 8 to 9 is also expected, with a probability of 70% in the next 30 years. If it happens, 4 of NHK's local stations may be submerged by tsunami. In Kochi Prefecture, NHK has built up a substation on a hilltop near the station. It is just a simple studio, but we can continue broadcasting necessary information even if the station is flooded. If we stop broadcasting when the audience badly needs the disaster information, people will be so disappointed that we may not be able to survive as a public broadcaster. Never stop broadcasting. Continue service for the audience in need became a major slogan of NHK after the big disaster in 2011. At last, we cannot improve disaster broadcasting without the training of staff. This is the emergency drill of our news center. We conduct a full-scale drill almost every night after midnight, based on various scenarios. They learn the procedure by their heart, not by mind. Disaster broadcasting to save lives is NHK's most important mission as a public broadcaster. NHK strongly believes that information saves lives and will further improve its disaster broadcasting to prevent and mitigate damage.
In this presentation, I would like to emphasize 3 points. Number 1, build a close cooperation between media and the disaster authorities. Disaster authorities can issue a warning, but they cannot bring it to the people. Media disseminate a warning, but we cannot issue it. The combination of media and the authorities will enable people to get critical information in time. Number 2, make full use of the internet for disaster risk reduction. Digital media has a great advantage in providing detailed and personalized information, while TV and radio are good at simultaneous mass communication. The combination of the old and new media will bring the comprehensive understanding of the disaster risks. Number 3, train your staff constantly. In case of emergency, we can only do what we learned by heart. Find problems and solutions through a drill in peacetime. Good equipment and good training of staff will bring you a better disaster broadcasting. Thank you for your kind attention. Now I will take your questions from the floor.
But he won't, because he's already left. Sorry, you were given your opportunity in the break, but we thank Hashimoto-san immensely for his contribution to that session, and of course to Akil. I think hopefully you'll have been enlightened in many different spheres during that session. And like a good disc jockey, I am now going to move seamlessly into the very next session, which is to do with literacy and disaster preparedness. Again, as you can see, we have a full panel here already. We have other contributors who wish to take part during this session. I think it appropriate that we begin it with the host of last year's summit, discussing his and their disaster literacy campaign, Mr. Anatai Udomsilp, who is now an independent consultant from Thailand.
Well, a very good afternoon to you all. My name is Anatai Udomsilp. I used to be working with the Thai Public Broadcasting Service, or Thai PBS, who hosted the second Media Summit last year in Krabi province, and many of you may also have joined that summit as well. It is indeed my honor to be back here again as independent consultant at this third summit. And I'm very happy that part of the tagline of this year's summit include information for all that save lives of the people. In fact, information for all is the issue or topics of my concern dear to my heart, and have been working and have attached importance to this concept, the information for all, for so many years. And I will leave this part for the question and answer in case that you are also interested in providing the information for everyone in the society, particularly the disabled people. Anyway, back to our issue today. We are talking about the climate change literacy and disaster preparedness. I think that also concerns quite a lot about information as well. We have to understand that people need information, particularly in times of crisis or in times of disaster. But in practice, what do people learn in times of disaster? Normally, the media, as we all know, we have been working in this field. Normally, we follow disaster most of the time. We wait until something happened. Of course, unlike NHK that we have just seen, they have prepared beforehand, have rehearsed, have practiced all the time. But in general, we, particularly the journalists, only follow disaster. You know, when something happened, and then we report what happened, where it happened, when it happened, how big was the situation, or how big is the situation, what kind of damage that people have, and what kind of tragedy and donation. These are the things that we are quite familiar with when we follow news reports by the media. But in fact, what do people really need to know apart from all of this? They like to know, yes, of course, they like to know what happened, why it happened, how long it would last, and what kind of things that they have to do to protect themselves, to protect their lives and properties. These are the things that many times broadcasters or media practitioners may not adequately provide to the society, and the people may not have enough information about this. Talking about this, I'd like to use the case in Thailand, the mega flood in Thailand a few years ago, which was said to be one of the worst floods in 70 years. The question at that time was, would the people have been badly affected that much if only ... If only what? If only they had enough information beforehand. Many things can be prevented. Many damages can be reduced if only the public know or had known more information about it. And that is something that raised the issue in Thai media. What went wrong and what were missing from the work of the media, particularly when they work for the people. And this is the point that I would like to emphasize. I'm not going to go too much into details because we have been listening and talking and having discussed since yesterday already. So I will be very brief and save time for question and answer in the end. Now, what went wrong in the case of Thailand, and perhaps also similarly in many cases around the world? First of all, not accurate and not adequate information, particularly information before disaster. This is something that happened in the case of Thailand. Of course, for the case of Thailand, the authority concerned, the organization concerned, may wish to keep some of the information unopened or not very much like to disclose the information for fear that it might affect the stability of the authority or of the government. And this is one of the parts that I think we need to do more, particularly among all of us for the media, to unclose or disclose all the information that are not given to the people. The second thing, which very much relates to what we saw earlier from NHK work, there was not enough early warning information for the people. In fact, those of you or some of our friends here who work in Thailand and work in Thailand since that time may be familiar with the phrase that the authority gave to the people. Everything was under control. This is the phrase that was very famous at that time. And the public did not really believe that because they know that not the water was under control, but they are under the water. And not enough information given to them at that time. So this is also one of the points that I would very much like to emphasize, that we can reduce many damages if only early warning messages or if only early warning information has adequately been given to the public. The second 2 points that I would also like to emphasize here is that there was no or not enough knowledge on risk reduction. Disaster risk reduction was not very much emphasized or disseminated to the public. Not many people know what they can do or should do to prevent disaster and to reduce the damage in case a disaster takes place. Now, this is one of the points that I think we need to emphasize, and as media, we need also to help disseminate this kind of information to the public as well. The other thing is that it is not enough preparedness, particularly by the authority and by the public, and this is something also that we have to look at, and perhaps we need to focus more in the future as well, because as mentioned earlier, many cases can be also prevented, or even though they couldn't be prevented, but at least the damage of those disasters can be reduced somehow. So I think these are the 4 points that I would like to emphasize here. The other point, lack of cooperation. We just heard from the video clip earlier by NHK that they also emphasize very much on the cooperation, particularly between the media and the organization concerned. And this was the case in Thailand many years ago. And in fact, when I look at our friends from ADPC, in ADPC also has organized various workshops how the media can work closely with the information officers of many organizations who are responsible for the disaster risk reduction. And I think we need to emphasize more on this because there has always been a gap in cooperation between the two. In fact, many organizations look at us, media practitioners, as their enemy who would like to dig out the stories and report things about them, So we need more cooperation on this. And these are the things that I would like to emphasize and open for further discussions again. The other thing that seems to be inadequate, most of the time we provide current report of the current situation. We follow situations about the disaster, but the analysis of the disaster may not be adequately provided for the public. And this is something that we did quite well in Thailand a few years ago. Thai PBS was the first television station that provided analysis about the flood, why it happened, how long it would last, and what kind of thing people should do to calm down the panic that the public had during the flood. So according to the poll, Thai PBS ranked the top because of the analysis, because of the information that people think that they can trust. So this is something that I think we should focus more and work more. There are another two phenomena that happened a few years ago in Thailand, in the case of the mega flood in Thailand. One is the use of social media. And again, we just listen to the making use of the social media. And at that time, Thai PBS website was ranked on the top as well, because people think that they can trust the information from public service broadcasting, and they visited the website. Many people visited website because that is a quick way of getting information. And I think we should work more on the social media these days, because we have more facilities, particularly the live broadcast on the social media. Many of us are also familiar with the Facebook Live, for example, which can provide quick information, rapid information for the public live. But bear in mind that connectivity is very important. Many times when disaster takes place, there is no connectivity for the social media. So we have, if we are able to afford to have high technology like NHK, that would be perfect. But anyway, in general, I think the social and media can be very important for us. The other thing is the work with the community. In times of crisis, in times of disaster, the one who can help the affected people best, and the first one who can help them, are the people in that area. Therefore, the training of the people to help the people is also very important, and to train them to make use of the media. They can become citizen journalists to report what happens in the area. They can also disseminate information to friends and families who live in the same community about the disaster that are taking place and how to prevent themselves. And that worked very well in the case of Thailand many years ago. And the fact that Thai PBS could work very well to help the people at that time was because of the help and assistance from the community. People who are affected by the flood came to the station and helped report about the situation in their communities. And that worked so well. So this is also another point that I would very much like to encourage, that we do as well to help promote the work with the citizen journalists and community broadcast or community media. In fact, outside you can see that there are also community radio exhibition there. I think that is also very important, and these are the points that I would like to emphasize within a very short time, and waiting for question and answer after other speakers. Thank you very much for your kind attention. ขอบคุณครับ
Thank you, Anatai. Very concise, as usual. Let us immediately move on to the Bangladeshi experience. If Sheikh Mohammed Rafat Ali, who actually assisted us in the judging of this year's ABU Climate Change Awards. He is Regional Director of Bangladesh Betar.
Thank you, Russell. A stitch in time saves 9. Right message at right time can save millions. Bangladesh is a country that experiences different type of disasters. In order to save my time, I will concentrate on cyclone only. And in case of broadcasting, both Bangladesh Television, Bangladesh Betar, radio and TV, both work on disaster risk reduction. I will concentrate on radio. First, I want to say about the experience of Bangladesh. According to the World Risk Index and Long-Term Climate Risk Index 2016, Bangladesh is among the 5 most risky countries. And if we think about the cyclone, we face at least one tropical cyclone in every 3 years. If we look at some historical events of cyclone, in 1970, the death toll was 300,000. Some said it is more than that, up to 500,000. In 1991, it was 139,000. And in 2007, Cedar, it was 3,363. If we compare our broadcasting situation, in 1970, our radio did not broadcast any forecasting regarding the cyclone. So we see this result. In 1991, our radio broadcast forecasting, early warning, everything, but people could not imagine, our public could not imagine that it will be of so much intense. And in case of third situation, that is in 2007 Cedar, we had early warning and people believed it, and most of the people went to the evacuation center. The result is the death toll is decreased. And if we think about the last 10 years, we'll find that we have made our number of death toll much, much less. The secret in our broadcasting definitely played an important role. First, I will like to tell about the vision of Bangladesh government. It says our vision is to reduce the risk of people, especially the poor and the disadvantaged, from the effects of natural, environmental, and human-induced hazards to a manageable and acceptable humanitarian level, and to have in place an efficient emergency response system capable of handling large-scale disasters. That's why the government has the standing order on disasters, and all the ministries, all the departments of Bangladesh government are following it. We have already identified the pathway of cyclones of hundreds of years. That's why, in case of broadcasting, we have divided our coastal region. You know that already the 19 districts are among the coastal regions, and we have divided the area into three places. First of the eastern part, that is longitudinal part on the right, there are hills there. Then the western part, the Sundarban is protecting us, and in the middle part, the most vulnerable part, where we have many, many islands. And we are using our regional broadcasting station in such a way on a seaport-based message, so that in these three parts, all the people can get their necessary messages. In case of public service broadcasting, Bangladesh Betar has 5 regional stations in Dhaka, Chittagong, Cox's Bazar, Khulna, and Borishal. We are broadcasting in AM and FM transmission. At the same time, the government is planning to extend some more stations in these coastal areas, in Barguna, in Noakhali, etc. Moreover, we have 9 community radio that are working in this area, this coastal area. And we have a plan to make a good network among the public service broadcasters and the community broadcasters, so that we can work together, share our experience, and uphold our activities. Already, the meteorological department have designed the disaster calendar. We know in which month which disaster may occur. Based on that, we are trying to develop our continuous broadcasting activity. In this activity, in our continuous broadcasting, we are developing our disaster content in such a way, in 4 main ways. First off, we will think about the phase when there is no disaster. At this moment, we are trying to broadcast issues of climate change, and at the same time, we are trying to develop some content that can be used for the pre-disaster, disaster, and post-disaster period. In the pre-disaster period, that is 1 month before the cyclone, or within the cyclone calendar, before we know that this is the time when we may have a cyclone, we do our pre-disaster phase. We try to aware people. We try to aware people to tell them what might happen in case of disaster. So we give them the message to evacuate and some other message. In that message, what we try to do, we try to use simple local language. We are focusing on it. We are thinking and doing some two-way phone-in program. We want the participation of our listeners in that program so that they can share their experience and we can share our knowledge. We can share the experience of our expertise to them. At the same time, we are trying to broadcast the voice of the local leaders. If a local leaders try to avoid the people of their area, they may inform hardly 100 people, but through radio they can tell it to thousands. We are thinking about emergency messages, we are developing life-saving messages, and we are giving importance to experience sharing, experience of cyclone so that everyone can understand. And we know that our women and children are the vulnerable group. We know about our disabled people. We know about our elderly people. So we want to we try to aware our people so that they can look after themselves at the time of disaster. We are already very much well accustomed with the food and nutrition things and the water and sanitation system problems, which we focus in our program every time in our radio program. And some issues we are focusing nowadays so that it is not ignored. One is sexual reproductive health. Doctors and social workers are addressing these issues. These are the issues that we cannot discuss because of our social norms with each other. We are discussing it through radio and helping our people to know of their sexual reproductive health, especially during the disaster period, which is very much important. And finally, I think that still we have some areas where we need to focus, that is the meeting psychological needs. I want to say that victims and volunteers who work with cyclone, whose nearby person died during the cyclone, they need some help, there's some psychological help. And in that case, we have some lackings. We don't have that much experienced persons to say something about it, to share it, so that they can share their experience with them, get some counseling. I will request ABU to focus on this issue because I think it is not only the problem of Bangladesh, it is problem of all over the world to say something at the time of disaster. So if they can allow, they can arrange some training on it, it will be very much helpful. And I had the experience to be in NHK in 2011 tsunami, so I have seen how they work on it. So I will request to arrange something like that. And thank you very much to all of you for your patience hearing. Thank you.
Yes, I think a very valid point made there. Thank you very much indeed. Well, we've gone from Thailand to Bangladesh. We will now move on to Vietnam. Ms. Tan Ha has some unique experiences from her country to share with us.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Today is so glad for me to standing here to share my speech. That is just my experience I draw from the working process in Vietnam television. And today my title I chose is roles of specialized television channels in Vietnam. And before my speech, please look at a very short clip. Please. Yeah.
December 2017, 9 provinces in the middle of Vietnam were devastated by 3 consecutive floods caused by heavy rain and hydroelectric plants simultaneously discharging water. During nearly 20 days of these floods, 37 people died and missing. Many houses flooded away. Thousands of people are homeless. An Hep Commune, Tu Yen District, and Phu Yen Province Local people here have still shocked about the horrible level of flood water at night on 15 December 2016. Flood suddenly hit. The village must be awake at night to run away from the flood. The flood passed. All the property in Miss Wang's house was swept away. The house was left with only the roof and few items. Cannot evacuate, nothing left. We did not have a bed to sleep or even a cup of drink. The flood also swept through dozens of hectares of rice and crops. This season, the rice is going to be harvested, but it's gone. There's nothing to live on. We now only look forward to government support. Fujian is one of the 9 worst hit provinces in the floodless than 20 days in the middle of Vietnam. Although National Hydrometeorological Service had identified the complexity of the weather, however, local authorities did not get timely information to announce for people. Electricity off, no communications, the local people just only based on their experience from ancestors. The people here did not have information to respond to. Nearly 100-year-olds, this is the first time Mr. Hype have seen a terrible flood like this. There has never been a flood like this. This year sees the huge and flash level of rainfall. We cannot prepare for it proactively. According to statistics, the Central Steering Committee for Natural Disaster Prevention and Control, those consecutive floods left behind 37 dead and missing people. 300,000 houses were inundated and swept away. Over 200 villages were isolated, and 500,000 students had to drop out of school due to the heavy flooded situation. Total losses in 9 provinces in central Vietnam in that December amounted to VND 780 billion. Luckily, in the center of flood area, teachers and students in An Hep Primary School were lucky to escape after the historic flood. The teachers were watched weather forecast on television and then informed their students for off school days. However, there were students' parents still took their children to school. A sudden flood came. Thanks to experience and knowledge, Teacher Hang rescued many students when the flood came suddenly. The flood water flew in the classroom. I took my students on the table, but the water rushed to the table. Then I carried one on my shoulder, my arms on 2 and one on my neck. I held firm to the cupboard to resist the rising water. Flood passed through, nothing left in school. No notebooks, no books or toys. Only mud. But fortunately, the children were safe.
Yeah, that is a very sorry, detailed story about the flood in the middle of Vietnam. So sorry, in my clip, there is a small mistake. The flood last in the December 2016, but in the clip 2017, sorry. Come back my speech. Yeah, my speech today, I want to mention about the roles of specialized channel television in Vietnam, and that story is a very, very detailed example to say about the roles of special television channels. Yeah, I tried to find out the definition for the special television channels. Actually, I can find out hundreds of results, but I want to mention about one sentence of my managers, Mr. Kim Chung. Maybe in this hall, some people know him. Yeah, he said that a specialized television channels is not only a television channels that has a lot of time and a lot of news about the issue, but also it must be the most accurate, fastest, and especially with the best reporter, journalists in anywhere and anytime. Yeah, and I want to mention why in Vietnam, why in maybe in other countries need to have the specialized channel for on climate change and disaster. As you know, in my countries, there is many information resources, And right now, people often find out the information in some sources such as YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, radios, television, internet, and newspaper. As you know, with a smartphone, you can find out information in many sources. But when the disaster happens in one area, especially in the remote area, you know that people cannot connect with the internet, so they cannot find out the information. In Vietnam, past through many generations, people have a routine that each family will have one television in their family. After a working workday, they come back their house, eat dinner together, and they will watch television. Yeah, they watch television and they find out the official television from government. So in Vietnam, that's the reason we want to give information for the people in the rural area. Because this reason, one channel television program was born in 2009. And that's VTC 14, and I have been working here in 6 years. This is the interface. You can access the internet and access the address vtc14.vn and see this interface. You can see in our interface there are many programs about the climate and environment. We have 9 weather postcards a day produced at the studio. And please come to my clip.
Xin kính chào quý vị và các bạn. Quý vị và các bạn hãy cùng chúng tôi khởi đầu một ngày mới với những thông tin cập nhật về thời tiết trong bản tin thời tiết sáng của kênh VTC14.
Thông tin mới nhất về sự tác động của không khí lạnh đến các khu vực sẽ mở đầu bản tin thời tiết tối nay của kênh VTC14.
Du khách muốn tìm một nơi thư giãn hay khám phá những miền đất mới cũng sẽ tìm được những gợi ý thú vị trong bản tin hôm nay.
Mời quý vị và bà con cùng theo dõi bản tin thời tiết nông vụ trên kênh VTC14.
Chào mừng quý vị và các bạn đến với bản tin thời tiết đô thị của kênh VTC14.
Yes, this is some kind of broadcasting news in our channels. Sorry, but it's in Vietnamese language. Yeah. So, VTC Foreign channels about the natural disaster and prevention and reduction for environment protection and sustainable developing. We specialized channel for the public benefit. There is no advertising in our channels. We don't have a duration for that. Yeah, with the aim for the better life. Until right now, we are the only official channels television of our government and one of 10 official channel television of our government. Besides the topic about the weather, about the environment, about the climate change, we have some general breaking news such as food safety, peril, healthcare, and traffic safety. Yeah, we have many kind of programs such as news, events, TV series, documentary, realities like life under affection and natural disaster and perils. We have 28 regular programs, including we have 10 daily programs, 18 series, and we have a schedule from 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. We have two target audience. The first target audience I want to mention about 6 to 18. We focus on education program. And the second target audience, we focus on 18 to 16 with new series and talk show with experts will come our studio with a live show, and they will analyze in the issue which happen on a day. Yeah, with our approach, we want to begin the prevention, raise awareness of people in the rural area about the climate change, adapt and implement. The second, we want to focus on the protection. That's a real action from government organizer. And the last, we want to focus on reduction. Yeah, and here is some competitive advantage. Global issue and international scale, debate and channel in natural disaster and prevention and reduction. For the community benefits, specialized contents, advanced technologies, HA. We really want to focus on HA because with the workers very young, we have staff very young. They have skillful and enthusiasm and solidarity. Our value, we have improved public awareness of environmental protection and sustainable development, creating a network of enterprise and organizations to practice social responsibility and commitment. Yeah, and until right now, after nearly 10 years was born, the greens of VTC 14 has become familiar to every Vietnamese family. Yeah, and here's an overview scenario, climate change scenario of Vietnam. Right now, we are so much phenomena of climate change such as drought, flood, storm, rainfall, snow, cyclone, and hail in Vietnam. Yeah. And as many countries, we really need to have more specialized channel television about climate change and disaster. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Ha. Let's move immediately from Vietnam on to other places, Myanmar and Tanzania, before we come back to Bangladesh. We've kept BBC Media Action, their presentation until last. Richard Lace and Arif Al-Mamoun will bring us their international perspectives. If, by the way, you were reading the biographies of these two, Arif is no longer the acting head of research. He is now the real thing. Richard.
We gave him a promotion. Thank you very much. I guess Shura Shonda, I'm Richard. I'm BBC Media Action Bangladeshi Kajkori. Arif is our head of research. We are the last speaker of the last session, so we're going to try and give you something to remember as you leave these 2 days. I have no slides. We're just going to play you some content, because the session title is Content for Climate Change Literacy and Disaster Preparedness. And we've talked a lot today and yesterday, I think, about process and relationships and mechanics and how we all work together. But I don't think we've talked very much about, once you have the platforms and once you have the systems, what do you put on the screen? Or what do you put on the radio? And so we're going to give you 3 very short examples, one from here in Bangladesh, one from Tanzania, but we're going to start with Myanmar. And what I think I want you to take away from today and what I'm about to say in the next 10 minutes is that information is not enough. I would challenge you. People are complicated. People are psychological beings who you need to persuade if you want them to do something differently. This is Bangladesh, so how many people in the room smoke cigarettes? I do. How many people have you ever, if you're a smoker, someone's told you to stop smoking, it doesn't work, yeah? We have different ways of thinking. And there are drivers that will help people to change their behavior. There are also things that will stop people from changing their behavior. And in Myanmar, the clip I'll show you was a really good example where there were two key barriers that we found. One was simply information. They did need information, yeah? They needed to know what to do to be prepared. But at the same time, there was a reluctance to do it because they didn't want to be the only person in their community who was taking action. They felt embarrassed, they felt like they were the odd one out, they felt like it wasn't for them because they would be laughed at. People would think they were a bit crazy if they were taking action. So here is a short public service announcement that we made with MRTV in Myanmar. It's one of a series, no celebrities, no jargon, it's not a normal Myanmarese public service announcement. It's just a story of a woman who was doing something, and we hope other people will follow her. Here we go.
မုန်တိုင်းအတွက်ဘာတွေပြင်ဆင်နိုင်မလဲ
မုန်တိုင်းကတော့အဲ့လိုပဲသူခဏတစ်ဖြုတ်ထွက်လာတယ်အကြာရှည်ကြီးတော့မလာဘူးခဏတစ်ဖြုတ်လာလိုက်တယ်အဲ့လိုနာကီပြီးမှတစ်ခါလာတာဖောင်းနေတော့တော်တော်ကုန်သွားတယ်ဖောင်းနေတော့ပင်နေသားတွေရွာသားတွေလည်းအလုံး၄-၅ရက်ကမလုပ်လိုက်ရဘူးနဲ့တိုက်လိုက်ပင်နေတဲ့ထွက်လို့ကတော့ကလေးဆိုတော့ပိုးဆိုးတာပဲစိတ်မချမှုရှိတော့မထွက်ကြအောင်အဲ့ဒါလေးကြတော့ကိုစုပေါင်းထားတဲ့ဟာလေးစားရတာပေါ့အဲ့လိုခက်ခဲဖြစ်မှဆိုလို့ကိုရတယ်တနေ့တည်းကိုပဲစားတစ်ခွက်ဝယ်စားရတယ်ဖဲဖဲပြီးတော့ဒီလိုနားထောင်နေဆိုတာကိုဘူးတုတရအောင်လို့နားထောင်ဒီမို့ဆိုလည်းသူကြိုသိရတယ်သူကြညာတော့ဘယ်နေ့ဘာဖြစ်မယ်ဆိုတော့ကိုကသတိထားပြီးတော့စူးစောင်းထားရတာပေါ့သမင်းချက်တဲ့အချိန်တိုင်းစံချင်ပြီးတာနဲ့မနေ့ပဲချက်လက်တစ်ခါတဆုပ်ဖွဲ့တယ်ညနေပဲချက်လက်တဆုပ်ခဲ့စုတဲ့ဘုံတက်တက်ထဲတယ်ဆုပ်နေတိုင်းထက်အဲ့ပါများတော့ဘုံလေးနဲ့ပြည့်သွားစီကြလဲစီငါချက်သားဝယ်တယ်30သားဝယ်တယ်ဝယ်လို့ကိုဒီဟာဟင်းချက်မယ်ဆိုတစွန်းဖယ်လိုက်တယ်ဘလင်းလေးနဲ့နာကိဖြစ်တော့ဆိုလို့အင်္ဂလိပ်တိုင်းနဲ့ကျိုးနဲ့ကတ်ချကြခဲ့တယ်တိုင်းနဲ့ဖုံးဝလုံးနဲ့ခါကျချင်းမြုပ်သွားတာတော့စမ်းမလို့ဒီနာငါလည်းကိုတမီလေးကိုလည်းမာလာတယ်စုပ်ဆောင်မမေးနဲ့ချက်တိုင်းဖဲဖဲထားအိတ်ကလေးနဲ့များရင်ဘုံလေးတဲ့ထက်အဲ့လိုတော့မှားထားခဲ့တာပေါ့
ကြိုတင်ပြင်ဆင်ထားပါကျွန်တော်တို့လည်းလုပ်နိုင်ပါတယ်
So that's from Myanmar. Very simple story, very simple technique. Just every time you cook, save a handful. The whole series, 8 PSAs, 52% of people who watched them then took action. Yeah? Really successful. To Tanzania, completely different environment, completely different media landscape, completely different problems. So in Tanzania, we worked with 3 incredibly local radio stations to do really, really locally focused disaster preparedness content. A lot of it around livelihoods, a lot of it around agriculture, and crucially in Tanzania, a lot of it around relationships with local government. Because that was a barrier. People wanted to act, but they felt that the local government systems and structures were too complex and too constricting, and so they didn't feel that they could do something. So in Tanzania, we work with 3 radio stations, and you'll see one clip of one of our beneficiaries who listened to the radio, and one clip of one of our radio stations and the local government officials that they worked with. And I want you to look at 2 things that are key. We saw in Myanmar that information was important. Here, we know that discussion is really important. So if you can encourage people to talk about something amongst themselves, we see that they're much more likely to take action in response. So here are 2 clips from Tanzania.
Naitwa Elizabeth Lipindi, mwenye umri wa miaka 48, naishi kijiji cha Makanga. Ilikuwa ni nalangua pombe na kuuza kwenye banda langu. Hali ya kipato ilikuwa ni duni. Ilikuwa duni kiasi cha baadhi ya mahitaji ilikuwa siyapati. Baada ya kusikia kipindi cha nyakati zinabadilika, nikawa na mimi nimebadilika, nikajirusha kwenye shughuli zingine tofauti na ile shughuli niliyofanya awali. Nikajirusha kwenye kilimo cha nyanya. Nikawa naendelea vile vile na kilimo cha nyanya. Mpaka hapo baadaye tena tukaunda kikundi, tukawa na shamba la vitunguu. Tukalima lile shamba la vitunguu kwa pamoja mpaka kufanikisha kuvuna na mpaka kuuza. Mabadiliko nayaona na mafanikio pia yapo. Kwa mfano, kuna watoto wangu nawasomesha na kujikimu mwenyewe kimaisha na familia yangu.
Naitwa Mariam Kasawa, ni mhariri mkuu wa Dodoma FM. Katika kuandaa vipindi vya nyakati huwa tunaangalia mada ambazo zinaendana na wakati husika. Kwa mfano, tunaangalia kipindi cha mavuno, tunaweza tukaandaa vipindi ambavyo vinaendana na wakati ule.
Kipindi cha nyakati zinabadilika kupitia Dodoma FM hutupa changamoto na kuweza kuelewa matatizo yanayowasibu wakulima. Kwa mfano, kuna kijiji kimoja hiki cha Machali, mlienda kule mkapata matatizo na wakulima wakalalamika kuhusu mbegu ambazo wanazipanda ni kwamba hazizai kwa wakati. Tukaanzisha shamba la mbegu ambazo zinakizana na zinakwenda na wakati kulingana na unyevu uliopo.
Tumeweza kuwaunganisha wananchi pamoja na viongozi. Wananchi wanatoa kero zao, wanapata majibu kutoka kwa viongozi wao.
So a very different context, much more locally focused content to focus on a very particular local problem. And the things that worked there were listening groups to encourage people to discuss what they were listening to and engaging with local government to help break down that barrier. Bangladesh, different context altogether. Arif is going to talk about the last example, which is the project we run here.
Thank you very much. Being the last speaker of the session, last speaker of the day, and to some extent last speaker of the summit is not easy. I can see that people's energy is going down. So I will be short, as much short I can be. And I will be showing two examples from Bangladesh. Both are from Amrai Pari project that we do. And in English it translates to Together We Can Do It. And this project is basically helping people to be better prepared in terms of for extreme weather events. And our research showed that two things work together to be prepared for extreme weathers. One is actions. People took actions more likely when they work together, which basically works as enabler. And people were basically waiting for government or NGOs to help them, which is the biggest barrier for their life. To take actions in terms of extreme weather events. So Amrai Pari TV series try to leverage that 2 points that I discussed, and basically we went for TV because this is the most watched or catered media source for Bangladeshi people. So let's see what Amrai Pari did.
পর্যন্ত আমরা ঘুরে বেরিয়েছি দেশের নানা প্রান্তে, কথা বলেছি সেসব এলাকার মানুষের সঙ্গে এবং একসাথে জলবায়ু পরিবর্তনজনিত বিভিন্ন সমস্যার সমাধানে পথ খুঁজেছি।
এবার আমরা এসেছি দেশের দক্ষিণে, সমুদ্রের কোল ঘেঁষা বরগুনাতে।
আমরা এখন আছি বন্দরনগরী চট্টগ্রাম।
আমরা আছি বাংলাদেশের সর্বোত্তরে কুড়িগ্রামে।
আমাদের এখন যে আয়োজনটা এই দিয়ে আমাদের সংসার চালাতে খুব কষ্ট হইতেছে। আমরা একবেলা খেতে পারি আর একবেলা খেতে পারি না।
শাক সবজিও লাগান যায় না, কিছু না, ধানের চাষও না।
আমরা কামলা কিসে না দিলে তো ভাত পাইনি, নদীর মধ্যে মাছ না ধরলে ভাত পাইনি।
এখন আমরা সর্বহারা, এখন যদি এই যে গর্বিটাটাও চলে যায় আমাদের থাকার আর কোথাও কোনো জায়গা নেই স্যার।
এই সাঁকড়ে দিয়ে আমরা খুবই কষ্ট করতাম, এখন আর এই কষ্ট হবে না। সাইক্লোন যদি আবার আসলে ব্রিজটা আমাদের বেশ উপকারে আসবে।
এই যে ঘর তৈরির এই যে সিস্টেমটা আমাদের কাছে এখন বর্তমান সবচেয়ে নতুন সিস্টেম। এর আগে আমরা এই সিস্টেমটা পাইনি। এখন এইটা যদি আমাদের জন্য ঝড় সহনশীল হয় তাহলে এটা আমাদের জন্য অনেক ভালো।
এগুলো হলে নিজেরা খাতে পারবো বা একটু বেচতেও পারবো, জন্মজুরিটা খাটতেও তো সেটা ধরো আমার আর খাটাখাটনি করতে হবে না।
সবাই মিলে কাজ করলে একটু খুবই ভালো লাগে।
আমার খারাপ লাগতেছে, কারণ এই কাজটা আমরা এর আগে করতে পারতাম, তাহলে আমাদের আরো আগে মানে সমস্যাটা মিটে যেত।
আমাদের গল্প এখানেই শেষ নয়, যাত্রা কেবল শুরু।
So you can see, like in Amrai Pari, what we tried to do is finding out the best or cheap and replicable actions that people can take to be prepared for the extreme weather. One correction from the video is that it says that 36.5% of the Amrai Pari viewers are taking actions. It is basically 47%, because after this video has been recorded, we did another survey, which is a nationally representative sample size survey in Bangladesh, and where we found that 47% of the people who watched Amrai Pari took action, and they took preparations for their those actions is basically like taking preparation for be prepared for the extreme weather events. So next example I will be presenting is about urban audience or urban youth, which is completely different. As Richard was saying from the very beginning, that information is not everything. Because people are complex, people have complex psychological needs, and you have to cater that. So when we are talking about Bangladeshi population as general, and we took the TV as a media source, and we showed those cheap and replicable methods. When we focus to urban audience, urban youth, who are completely different, because urban youth are still underachieved for the TV audience, and they are completely engrossed or trying to cope up with the digital revolution, if I can say so, that using social media too much, and they're engaged in the social media platforms, which is basically Facebook. So we try to cater that, and they are emerging Facebook viewers, and we partner with a well-known animator to boost the reach, and we try to do it in a way so that it can be used for their use as well, and also with best humor possible, and short, because it has to be short, because you just scroll through Facebook, you do not really stay there, you just scroll. So the video has to be short. So let's see what the video say. that's how we try to cater urban youth. And if you want to see more content, definitely go to Facebook. I'm sure everybody has a Facebook account. Go to Facebook and like Amrai Pari page, and I'm sure you will be seeing so many contents. Right now we are doing some contents on the heat wave as well. So you're welcome to visit and like and share the page. Richard, you want to close? So that's all from our side. Thank you very much.
Yes, Arif, Richard, thanks very much indeed. Okay, well, let's go questions immediately then. You have 5 panelists there. First questions, please. Yes. Lady with red headscarf there. After that, okay.
As we are talking about content, so I would like to add some information. Like there are so many species, like climate sensitive species. So is there any idea from ABU stakeholder like ABU community to consider some species like animal, both vertebrate and invertebrate? We can consider them as they are climate sensitive. They can indicate the onset of calamities. So is there any plan from your end to consider those climate sensitive species?
Who is that question related to?
I think anyone, to you or to any,
the panel.
like ABU, like a stakeholder like ABU.
Yes? Okay. Sorry. Can we get the mic, please?
It's okay. Bangladesh Better has a co-relationship with agriculture information system, where at every region, all the agriculture department works with us. They give us suggestion to do what to do on these issues, and based on that, we design our program. So it is the agricultural specialists. They decide what to do, and as broadcaster, we facilitate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Gausi. I'm teaching at Department of Zoology, University of Dhaka. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay,
very much.
thank you. Question there?
Yes. So my name is Zahidul Islam. I work for Bangladesh Television. So my question maybe goes to Mr. Rifat Ali, the Regional Director of Bangladesh Better, Iskadon. So we are talking about the climate change issue. We are talking about disaster risk reduction, and we are talking about also the media's role in this regard. So as we know, the Bangladesh Betar is a huge network of radio stations throughout the country. It has a significant number of regional stations in the remote areas, and it has FM stations as well. So as we know, at the very early of the media flourishment, the media, it calls radio is one-way medium and television is two-way medium. But nowadays, radio is also two-way medium, as radio has it has a skill. A significant number of radio audience, they are listening through this device that is mobile. And as you know, there is a system that's called RDS, Radio Data System. Why you are not using the RDS system for disseminating information that scrolls to the audience? It will be better and easygoing to the audience.
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, I like to say that we are doing it. We are doing it, and our every regional station is trying to do it with their limited resources. We don't have that much resources, but we are using phone-in, we are using SMS, we are using Facebook, and we are also making participatory programs. Our listeners are helping us to do so. In the rural areas, there are many listeners clubs. They are making program on our behalf. They are making gathering in their villages. They are talking to us, participating with us, and sometimes with our panel members. So they are much more literate than us. They are sharing their experience, and I can say that all the people of Bangladesh are helping, from little bit small and small initiatives through this radio. And due to all these devices, this is become more easier for all nowadays. 10 years before, the number of radio listeners were decreasing, but it is totally changed due to a multimedia approach. As we are not only broadcasting radio, we are available in Facebook for comment. We are making programs not only with letter feedback, we are using other messages too, so we are working now.
Question there.
My name is Shurat Kumar Sarkar. I am Deputy Director General Program of Bangladesh Television. My question is to the Vietnam digital television. The video that you have screened, you did not serve the information to the people, so people suffered a lot due to the recent flood. Do you find out what is the reason? Is it the failure of the media or the meteorological department? And what did you do or plan for the next to minimize the sufferings of the people?
Sorry. Yes, was that to you?
Can you repeat the question?
Sorry. Sorry, it was Taha, yeah? Could you just repeat the question, Taha?
Yeah. Yes.
You have screened a video recently, and people did not get information about the flood, and that's why people suffered a lot in that film that you have showed. So did you find out what is the reason? Is it the failure of the media, or is the failure of meteorological department? Yeah. And from that learning, what did you plan to mitigate such type of sufferings of the people?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Actually, in the first reportage, I show you about the one story in the middle of Vietnam. Actually, in December 2016, there flood duration in nearly 20 days, and they happened in the 9 provinces in Vietnam. But in the clip, I just mentioned in one province is the most affected by flood. The same area, the same district, in a remote district. We have two stories in our clip. The first in one village. They don't know information before the flood came, and they don't know how to deal with. Cannot evacuate. Another in a story in a primary school, you can see the teacher I mentioned in the clip. She watched television channels, and she know about the flood will come. Actually, they evacuate anything before the flood, but many parents of the children don't know about the information. They still take their children to the school, and when the flood came, the teacher I mentioned, just based on her experience and information she received before, to rescue the children. So the reason I want to mention about why do we have television, specialized channel television, because why in one district, remote districts, there are people know information about the flood, about the information about the climate change, but another people cannot know. Yeah, so that's the reason we need, we have a specialized channel television, but until right now, nearly 10 years, when our channels were born, our government want to spread other official channels about the climate change for the people. But we, of course, we lack of support, of course, the financial from government. So right now we want more support, and that's a need of specialized channel television in our countries.
Yes, we have a statement here from Sariful Islam, who is with ActionAid.
Hello. Thank you, Russell. I want to say something. In the digital era, content is the king, and whatever you want to say, whatever you want to tell, if you want to provoke or influence people, you have to make some contents. So that's why during working in the disaster issues, I have seen that when government make a content, the content and the people like BBC Media Action make content, we make different some technical issues like the visualization. When government, they are maintaining a long process, so when they are making this content, that is, from my experience, it is not well enough for the people. And in this time, as the mobile phone is a very smart one, if we can make the mobile phone as the content producer, that will be very great. So I request BBC Media Action, the government to work together, the people like BBC Media Actions, to train the people in the community people so that they can make content their own, because people know how to handle the disaster. And if they already have the mobile phones, if we can make them trained to produce content, like video, photos, and they can edit the photos or videos, that will make more sense. Because if you can empower the people, they can produce more and more content. So coordination between the government and the stakeholder from the NGOs or the development workers, if we can make a good platform, who can give the training to the community people so that they can make content for themselves, which can be produced in the national level. It will run for not only community people, but also national and international level. So I request both government parties and the NGO and the development partners to make a common platform so that we can give training the local people and they can make content. Ultimately, that content reflects their emotions, their needs, and all of the things. Thank you.
Question here.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Maulana K.M. Abdul Momin Shiraji. I am Assistant Professor of North Bengal University. I am from Rajshahi. Someone asked me, am I from Afghanistan? It is wrong. I am Bangladeshi, Dr. Shiraji, and the receiver of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, and the anchor of Bangladesh television, Dharmo Zibon, and the Khatib Lalzal Shahi Jame Masjid at Mogh Bazar in Dhaka. Now, I would like to request you, nowadays, the terrorism and the violence is the worldwide problem. Think about this. And then I request you, there are many religious leaders in this globalized world. So, it will be better when they will include in this program third ABU Media Summit on Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction. So, now I request my humble request and my question, have you any plan to include the every religious leader, Maulana, Imam, Khatib, Buddhist or Christian, or every religious leader, have you want to include them with this important and valuable program? It is my request and question.
To whom?
Yeah.
Who?
I would like to
your
question.
The panel.
No, my dear. I would like to request you, and this is the question to you.
Oh, to me?
Yeah.
This is the first question in 2 days to me.
Yeah.
Am I to answer the question, or you'll answer the question? Right. So I get the question, but he answers. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Shirazi. Nobody is excluded in our activities. So everybody has the opportunity and right to participate in the relevant programs organized by broadcasters around the world. Thank you very much.
Yes, may I just say that yes, indeed. The ABU are a very democratic organization, and I'm sure that if you were to make an application to be part of it, you would be welcomed. You would be more than welcome. So yes, in future, if you would like to participate, we would only be too pleased to accept your participation. So thank you. Yes, indeed. Anatai would like to answer also.
Well, actually, I agree that everybody should be involved, particularly in times of crisis. We need information. But as information provider, we also have to make sure that we understand the basic concept of accurate information. It is not information from anyone. Not everyone can do. So they have to be trained. For example, our friends from over there just mentioned about the community, about the use of social media. There are certain things that we also have to bear in mind. For example, making use of social media, we also have to understand that there are a variety of information. And some may be accurate, some may be useful. At the same time, we also experience that we also get fake information from the social media very easily. Therefore, the user of the social media need to have literacy, need to have the ability to analyze, to select information, useful information. And likewise, when we make use of the community or citizen journalists, it doesn't mean that anybody can report. They have to understand the concept of reporting, making sense of the thing that they experience or they witness. Not just to report subjectively, but objectively, with background, with scientific research. If you like the citizen from the community to report things, it's not just the feeling of maybe the weather is very hot, but how is the weather and what is the impact and what is the statistic. Things like this need to be trained, and therefore I encourage that we who have experience and have knowledge, when we work with the community, we should also provide these kind of knowledges to the community members so that they can work together with us. They can even be a source of our information that we can further disseminate to other regions or other communities that can protect themselves in times of disaster. Thank you.
Can I also bring in, if I can bring in Richard here, because I think we've discussed this, Richard, about it's not just about the message as such. It's a far more holistic approach, isn't it, to make sure that...
It is, absolutely. I think that, I've forgotten the gentleman's name from ActionAid, but I think absolutely making sure that citizens and community voices are reflected is really important. And I know that you're doing some amazing participatory video work at the moment, which is really interesting, but I think there's a difference between just giving someone a camera and then sticking that on the television and actually curating, explaining, putting that sort of content in context, which is a really professional, highly skilled job that you have to be trained for. So the voices of communities absolutely should be reflected, both before a disaster and during one, but it's not as simple as just saying, here's your phone, go and shoot something. It doesn't work. The last point, if I may, a 10-second plug. Yep. If you're working in Bangladesh, and you talked about us needing to have a platform about NGOs and development agencies working more closely together with government on communications issues, there is one. It's called Shongjog. It's chaired by Ms. Rahima, if she's here, from the Department for Disaster Management, Deputy Director Training. And there are about 20 different organizations, including government, NGOs, UN, private sector, already engaged in that platform. The Secretary will know it well. So if you are involved in this, and you're not yet involved in Shongjog, and you work in Bangladesh, please come and talk to us and we can link you in.
Thank you, Richard. Last question of the session.
Thank you very much. I'm again Dr. Mohammad Jasimuddin, Professor Botany, Dhaka University. As you all know, university created for teaching and research. So in university, all aspect of nature, environment, ecology, humanity, every aspect, the teacher, the professor, and student conducting all its research. I think media have to involve with university. In that case, media can get reliable and valid data on which media can make or policymaker can make important policy based on reliable data. So my question is the BBC Bangladesh and my student also from the hall. So do you have any plan to involve more university people with media? Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Of course, we have. Currently, we are working in 3 distinct themes. One is resilience and humanitarian response, another one is governance, and another one is health. So, in all those themes, we do rigorous research, and we also use quite complex methods. If you can definitely know about randomized control trial method and other things. So we use those kind of methodology as well. And all the time, basically, we seek the hand for the teachers because we want to validate our methodology, our sample size, and like the peer reviews of the journals and things. So definitely, we work with the teachers and departments. And we have a platform that Dr. Salimul Haq sir was saying yesterday, that Gobeshona platform, where we all, the scientific community and media communities are also working together or coming together in a platform to share the research and the results and the publications to the general people or the audience. It's a kind of hub of the knowledge for the climate change and adaptation. And we are also looking for other ways to collaborate with the departments as well. And I'm definitely sure that we will be working on other aspects of the thematic areas as well. Richard?
Just in 5 seconds, all of our data has just gone online. Yes. So new data portal that we've just launched, all of our quantitative data is there for others to analyse, and we'd welcome your collaboration on that. It's free.
Thank you, Arif and Richard, for that. Thank you again for your participation. Remarkably, after 2 days, we're on time. We are now moving immediately to our wrap-up hour. This will be our last session, bringing it all to an end. The bad news is there's no coffee for you yet. You can go for some coffee later. We will move immediately onto this session. And so if I may thank my panelists here, again, very informative from all over the region. So thank you very much, all of you. If Anatai and Richard stay, please, for the last session, and the others may leave the stage. And if I may just talk you very quickly through what we will do, we will have a short session moderated by Satinder Bindra, who is on his way now, with some other additions to the panel. So this will be the wrap-up session, which will include some of the questions that you've written during the last 2 days. We will then have a summing up of the main points of the summit. We will then hear the Dhaka Declaration, so hopefully we can adopt that going forward to the next year. We will then pass the summit flag on to Fiji, who will be hosting us next year. And then we will have some ceremonial duties to perform as we draw the whole summit to a close. So that's what we'll have during the next hour, and then maybe you can have some coffee or some tea. But Satinder, if I can ask you to... Yep, with the panelists, and the panelists will be Atik Ahmed, Anatai, who we already have here, Richard from Media Action. We are hoping that Dr. Salimul Haq will also join us from the International Centre for Climate, and he's here. There we are. If you could come up and join us, thank you very much. Thank you once again. And this will be maybe around about 20 minutes. So once again, this will encompass the main points that we've been listening to over the last 2 days. So, this is the first wrap-up discussion and last discussion that we will have. It is to be conducted by Satindra. Off you go. You have 20 minutes according to my clock. Thank you very much. We have about 20 minutes. There's some unanswered questions from previous sessions. We'll take those. But this should be a session where we can quickly sum up the mood, the discussions. So quick introductions. You all know Anothai Udomslip, former director of the Academic Institute, Thai PBS. And to my left, Dr. Salimul Haq, Director, International Center for Climate Change and Development. We've been talking about his wonderful op-ed, which I pointed out to yesterday morning. Well-written piece, thank you very much. To his left, we have Richard Lace, BBC Media Action. Great to see you. And of course, you're all familiar with Atiq Ahmed, the Asia Pacific Disaster Preparation Center. He comes from Bangkok, and he's an expert on climate change and disaster risk management. Let me turn to Atiq first. Atiq, just bring us up to speed. 2 days, and you've got 2.5 minutes.
First, fabulous conference to start off with. The fabulous because there are several reasons. It's a mingling around of different type of professionals, different type of stakeholders. We have seen in the day one, the startup, we have seen things like the global policies, the global framework 2015, post-2015 frameworks. We have seen that how these are getting integrated. You know, the success of one pillar depends on another, and the whole success depends on success of the all three. So that kind of thing started to think about how we integrate more, how we come up with our experiences better from one domain to another. And then we started looking into different tools, different experiences, different, experiences from different layers as well. We discussed today the last mile. Yesterday we had a lot of discussions on some of the sectors came up, and the experiences of how actually we are using media, the media not in traditional senses, but also the new senses. The new senses, the media is getting into, in your own work, in your own life, in your own palm even. And then that is being implemented through your new set of mind, and new mindset is created into your own work stream as well, which is again getting back into your own work, but with a much more integrated fashion. The role of media we have started to see in a new fabulous domain, I would say, in a summary like that.
Thank you very much, Atiq. Richard, from where you sit and given the lens that you bring through your work, what will you take away from this conference?
Oh, there's a question. Two things maybe. One, that there are lots of people thinking the same thing. So we've heard actually quite a lot of echoes in this room over the last 2 days of people who've sort of referred back or repeated or said in a slightly different way. There's been themes that have emerged which I think have been resonant. And that's really nice, because sometimes when I sit in different fora, it's very difficult to get across to people why some of this stuff is important. So it's been really nice to hear that importance resonating. The other thing that I take away from today, and it's slightly nationally focused, but I've been really impressed with the commitment of the government of Bangladesh to this. And I think the work that they've done to put on the conference, but also with Bangladesh Betar and BTV here and the ministry as well, it's really clear that Bangladesh is taking this incredibly seriously. And I've been really impressed to hear about some of the progress that I didn't know was happening here in Dhaka. So that's been really an eye-opener for me.
If I may, imagine you're a news editor and you had to write the headline for this conference for tomorrow morning's paper. What would that be?
See, I'm not a journalist. I think there is hope. Yeah, that's what I take away. We're not there yet, but there is hope.
Well, that was the conclusion of the first session on which we had Atik, and there was overwhelmingly a sense of hope. So I think I agree with that headline. Let me turn, if I may, now to Dr. Huck. Dr. Huck, your op-ed suggested that regardless of the commitment of a nation or some nations, this work must go on. Are you still as convinced of that feeling after 2 days of discussions as you were when you wrote your piece?
Actually, I'm even more convinced. I think the point I was making is that the Paris Agreement on climate change, which nearly 200 countries came to 2 years ago, is no longer even in the hands of the leaders of those countries. It's in the hands of the people. It's in our hands. We are going to take it forward. And if one gentleman sitting in the White House in a country and a nation I won't name decides to go the other way, let him get on his rowboat, leave the ship, go back, go in the other direction. The ship is already moving in the right direction, and we don't need them to be an anchor weighing us back. And that was the point I made in my op-ed yesterday. I'm glad you agree. Because right now, as you may know, there are discussions going on in Bonn, and the United States is represented at the table there. And there's a debate within the US in the White House, which evidently now the first daughter, Ivanka Trump, is now the arbiter of whether they should stay in the Paris Agreement or not stay in the Paris Agreement. And the argument for staying is hold everybody else back. Is a seat at the table so we can hold people back. That's the argument inside the US. And the other argument is, no, we should just let them go and we go on our own way, which is what Mr. Trump has said in his campaign earlier, that he's going to leave the Paris Agreement. And so that is the debate. It's not about whether the US does anything. They've already decided not to do anything. They're not going to give any more money. They're not going to take actions. It's whether they stay in and drag us back or they leave us. And I say leave us.
What is your view, if I may ask Mr. Udham Slip? How have you viewed discussions, and has this strengthened your beliefs in the voice of the people, the actions that people can take individually after you've attended 2 days of sessions here?
Well, actually, I think, as you mentioned, the voice of the people, I think that is very crucial, because from our experience and from working with the people themselves, particularly the affected people, we always learn that whenever disaster takes place, it's the people who have to help themselves first. You know? And before any agencies, before any organizations, even before the media arrive, the first thing that they have to do is to help themselves. In fact, last year when we had the summit, the second summit, there were some civic society groups who came and joined us, and they were very happy that we organized a parallel conference for them in parallel with our media summit, because it is very important for them to express themselves and also to let the media know what they need from us in times of disaster and how we can work together. And therefore, I emphasize in my presentation as well how to improve the work and jointly work together with the civic society, with the individual people, particularly those living in the affected area. And that also includes how to train them or provide them some equipment, basic equipment and basic knowledge on how to become a citizen journalist by what we have mentioned earlier, by using some mobile phone, which we call mobile journalist. Things like this can be very useful and will open more opportunity for individual people to express themselves, to share their experience and be part of the disaster risk reduction, be part of the reduction of all the problems, environmental problems.
Quick follow-up, if I may. What's the headline then you would like to write for the papers tomorrow?
Well, I would like to write about information for everyone, because I think everybody has to take part in the disaster risk reduction.
Okay, so it's more than just the media. It has to be a holistic approach. Very well said. If I may turn now, we've heard all the panelists, and we'll turn to step 2. We have some questions, and then if any one of the panelists feels that they would like to communicate another message, I'm open to that. Just catch my eye. But I'd like to take this question for the panel, and maybe I'll turn to Dr. Haq to answer this. This comes from Zuhair Mahmood from NTV. And he says, climate change is, quote, like a slow poison to our existence. We, the public, know about climate change through scientific data provided by various organizations. But I feel presently it's mainly alarmist news. It's reported and then it's quickly forgotten. Let's take your take on that, please.
Well, the point about climate change is quite rightly pointed out. It's a long-term problem. It's not an immediate extreme event like a flood or a cyclone. Although floods and cyclones will become affected and more frequent and intense because of climate change, but there are also long-term things like salinity intrusion in the coastal areas, low-lying coastal Bangladesh, where millions of people are already drinking saline water and in future may not even be able to live there any longer. So it is a very slow-moving, at the same time as increasing the occurrence of the fast-moving events. And it's a combination of both. But I'm not hopeless. I think, humanity has the ability to prepare for it, deal with it, and manage the consequences, even though we can't stop them happening, or we hope that they won't happen as severely as has been predicted. But in Bangladesh, where we have to deal with them, we are all already, in my view, reasonably well on the way to building our own defenses to be able to cope with it. Not that they won't happen and won't cause a lot of destruction, but not nearly as much as they would be without our preparation. So I'm always hopeful.
Thanks. I'll turn to Atiq for the next one. And this question says, there's lack of scientific journalism to really convince the public about the imminent reality of climate change. Do you agree, disagree?
I partly agree, partly not agree. I mean, there is already, science integration to that. So the science community is providing information, getting into exchange, the knowledge exchange, interaction is happening. But sometimes, we don't see that into a certain level, what we expect to do so. So that amplification needed further. That is the, push behind, basically. We take it to all levels, up to even the lowest planning unit, which is, the Upazila level in this country. We have seen some countries, for example, Philippines have already started the integration at that level. From top, integration happened and then going to ground. So those kind of things, and this is one part. The other part is sort of interpreting the right science. The thing Dr. Salimul Haq yesterday so nicely mentioned, that interpretation part needs some guidance. And that guidance would require some time to sort of shoot forward. And that time we need to give to the media, and for that we require capacity building as well. So that I think we can look ahead with a much more positive things which we have started here. The interaction started to happen, the capacity building, mood is there, and the new media is also shaping up that momentum. I think in that positive note we can take forward.
Thank you. Any one of the panelists can take this. If more than one of you would like to answer this, I'm fine as well. There seems to be a lack of consensus about climate change in the scientific community. Now, that's a very big and tall question, so I would request you to keep your answers short and tight. Dr. Huck first.
I'll take that. There is no lack of consensus in the scientific community. That's it.
Is there a lack of consensus, speaking in more broader terms, Dr. Huck?
The lack of consensus is amongst some vested interests who are creating confusion because of their own personal and financial views. And this is particularly the fossil fuel industry, who are spending tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars sowing confusion, buying politicians, outright buying politicians, to claim that there is a lack of consensus. There is no lack of consensus.
Richard, would you want to take a stab at that, please?
The BBC changed its editorial policy about, I would say, 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago. You would have seen, if you watched BBC World or other BBC outlets in the past, that often we would attempt to balance someone talking about climate change with someone who was sceptical about it or was denying that it was happening. And the BBC's line changed. I would say probably half a decade ago, that in our view, the controversy, the matter of public policy debate that needs us to be impartial and down the line is no longer whether human-induced climate change is happening. The debate now is what to do about it, yeah? And so where we need to make, as an impartial broadcaster who prides ourselves on being neutral, where we need to be really careful is hearing all sides of the debate about what to do about climate change. But there is, I agree with Dr. Huck, there is no, from our side, doubt that it's happening.
Summary then is the science is clear, the science has spoken. Okay. Do you agree, sir?
Yes.
Atik, too.
200%.
I'm finding it very easy to build consensus. They're an ideal panel. Very, very easy. Okay, let's see if you can try to make my life a little difficult here. This question comes from Michelle Bellino. And Michelle, apologies if I haven't pronounced your name correctly. I'm going to take one of his questions. It was mentioned, quote, that youth are the future. How can this media summit engage our young workers? Who would like to take this?
So I think it's a summit like this, or us as media professionals and disaster management professionals, I think the two are very different. If you were going to design an event that was aimed at 22-year-olds, I would design quite a different event. No offense to anybody here, but this sort of format is unlikely to be attractive, I would think, to the majority of young people. And Reef talked about it just in that last presentation. For engaging young people in the topic, certainly here in Bangladesh, it's all about Facebook. That's where it's going. You see already urban youth is all over it. We see it rapidly expanding. We see 3,000 Taka smartphones now. We see it coming into rural areas. And even, I think we just came off air with a Facebook Live about heat waves fronted by a guy that I wonder how many people have heard of. His name is Salman Muqtadir. Put your hand up if you've heard of Salman Muqtadir. Okay, 1, 2. He is the most famous YouTuber in Bangladesh. He has 1.5 million followers, and he's huge with young people in this country. That's the way to hit a youth audience and to engage them with these issues. And I think it says something that only 3 people in this room have heard of him.
Okay, very short, and then we're going to conclude with that because I will stick to time. Thank you.
Just open forum for them, full stop. Young people, because we did already with ABU, with some other organizations when Thailand hosted the Asian Ministerial Conference on Disaster and Disaster Risk Reduction. We also organized workshops, 3 workshops. 1 for journalists, professional journalists. 2nd, for the young people who love to report about climate change and disaster. And the third one was for the community. So we did it already, and it worked very well. So perhaps in the next summit, we can also organize parallel activities as such. Thank you.
Friends and colleagues, can we get a good round of applause for all our panelists who've been very easy to manage, and they seem to agree on everything. But with that, back to you.
Thank you, Satinder. Let's move on. Someone who has diligently followed the 8 sessions over the last 2 days is Dr. Martin Hadlow. He's gone through probably 46 of these notebooks, just making notes of everything that's gone on, and he's managed to bring those 46 notebooks down to a few pages. So, Martin, the main points that have been made, could you please take us through what you believe those main points are?
Thank you very much indeed, Russell. That's quite a wrap, isn't it? Well, I have been going through some of the paperwork and have been enjoying the conversation myself for the last couple of days, so I hope I've been able to encompass not necessarily everything that's taken place over the last 2 days, otherwise we'd be here for another couple of days, but at least some of the main thoughts and main ideas which I feel came through, and the themes and the feelings that people had about the conference and about the things which were said. Everything is crying underwater. Do you remember those words? Those words were from a Bangladeshi farmer living in a flood-prone region of the country, and I think they eloquently summarize what this summit really is all about. We saw a very moving video at the opening ceremony yesterday, and we heard those words, everything is crying underwater. That was from that man as he stood, you might remember, in front of flooded fields and ruined crops. It's really the human voice of bewilderment, the human voice of despair, the human voice waiting with hope for a better future. But really, can there be a better future without global action on climate change and more resources and efforts made in the field of disaster risk reduction? The sessions of the summit have more than clearly shown that a lot more work is to be done and that the media plays a vital role in bringing the whole subject to the attention of a local, a national, and an international community. We gathered, as you'll recall, only yesterday in Dhaka, the dynamic capital city of the People's Republic of Bangladesh, as guests of the government, thank you, of Bangladesh Betar, Bangladesh Television, I'm wearing the badge, and of the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union. To our Bangladeshi hosts, Donabat, for a wonderful conference. Superb hospitality, outstanding logistics, a friendly welcome and kindness wherever we went. Yesterday, 2 honorable ministers of the government, one here with us today, presented inspiring speeches and told us of Bangladesh's progress as an emerging economic entity and powerhouse, not only in South Asia but globally. They also told us of the success of Bangladesh in becoming self-sufficient in food production and major efforts made to mitigate disasters, resulting in reducing the death toll in floods and cyclones from previously hundreds of thousands of people to just single figures. And news was also conveyed to us that the Prime Minister, Her Excellency Sheikh Hasina, had been awarded the UN's highest environmental accolade. Such was the success of Bangladesh's work in this field. At the opening ceremony also, the Secretary of the Ministry of Information steered us towards the content of the summit and the support of his organization in this entire venture. And the Secretary General of the ABU, Dr. Javed Matagi, reminded us of the subject matter to be discussed in our deliberations, and he quoted the UN Secretary General, who has said that climate change is the defining challenge of our time. Well, since yesterday morning, as you well know, we've had 2 days of intense and rewarding discussions. The conversation has been very diverse and very rich. We commenced yesterday with a keynote session looking at the challenges and successes in the field of climate change and DRR. How have the international treaties worked? Are they effective? Are they taken notice of? And then we moved forward and looked at climate change in society. And in session 2 yesterday, we heard how the movement of people due to climate change was bringing about much hardship and concern, while health issues and the very culture of some societies was being affected as the tangible results of climate change hit home. In the afternoon, we talked about serving the people and how we, as media and communication specialists, could take the enormous amounts of data and knowledge on the subject and adapt it in such a way that it becomes understandable and useful to a non-scientific audience. You might recall we heard of a student newspaper in Varanasi, and we saw through an internet link to the USA some really chilling video on sea level impact, which inspired us all, I think, to redouble our efforts and to take away from the summit practical ideas and projects. In the last session of yesterday, communication specialists came together to explain how they had introduced tangible programs in their own countries and communities. We learned of the training of young journalists and of a free open source information and training module which is produced by BBC Media Action and available to us all. Last night, our gracious hosts invited us to a gala night which saw us enjoy some really wonderful traditional musical and modern dance performances, and really an outstanding dinner of Bangladeshi specialities. And the evening concluded with the ABU Television and Radio Awards on climate change and disaster risk reduction. Congratulations to all those who won prizes. If you missed the evening, by the way, you really missed something special. Well, this morning, we picked up the pace of discussions and launched into the day by inviting all present to consider in session 5, as you might recall, walking the last mile. In other words, introducing projects that really can assist in getting things done. And a common theme coming through, I felt, was the need for collective action, collective efforts at the community level to do good things. As one speaker told us when describing the way that they operated with local communities, they said, "Tell me and I'll forget. Show me and I may remember. Involve me and I'll understand." Thank you, Ms. Sato, for those kind words. In session 6 before lunch today, we not only looked at community radio in Bangladesh, but via the internet, we linked with the other side of the subcontinent to hear about the smart village concept being modeled there. Just briefing on the subject of community radio, it was really inspiring to hear about Bangladesh's regional leadership in this field, and also to learn of future government efforts to support and ensure the independence and sustainability of the community radio sector. The NHK Masterclass reminded us of the sophisticated nature of that broadcaster's work in the areas of early warning mechanisms for earthquakes and tsunamis. Well, we may not be able to follow all of NHK's examples, but we can consider how we might modify and use some of the ideas in our own smaller organizations. And in the final summit session, just concluded, you'll recall, we turned to the theme of content for climate change literacy and disaster preparedness, and we were able to interact with great examples from here in Bangladesh, from Vietnam, from Thailand, and the broader Asia-Pacific region, and even into Africa as well. And now our summit draws to a close, and we are shortly invited to ratify the Dhaka Declaration, which will go forward to the next UN Global Conference to be held in Cancun in Mexico later this month. Just before I step aside, may I express a few words of thanks of the entire summit to a number of people. Firstly, we congratulate ourselves, we congratulate you, the delegates who've come from far and wide. You've stayed with the summit throughout. You've been here early in the morning and right through to the end of the day. You've actively participated with questions and comments, and sincere thanks for that. we've really been enriched by the diversity of this fantastic dialogue. To the presenters, the moderators, panelists, contributors of all the sessions, thank you. Without you, we could not have achieved anything at all. A lot of work's gone into it. To our hosts again, grateful thanks, Donabat. To the logistics and transport team, which met us at the airport, those of us arrived from overseas. To the conference support and administrative group. To the sound engineers over here, lighting technicians, thank you. The camera crews, to the organizers of the catering, thank you for the wonderful lunches and the refreshing tea breaks which we've enjoyed. To the exhibitors who are showing their wares in the stalls outside. To the Pan Pacific Hotel staff who've set out the chairs and tables for us and provided water for us every day. To all the journalists who've been here to report, mostly from the next room, and to provide publicity, thank you. To the police who've ensured our security and our safety. To the ABU team who've, well, their wonderful professional efforts. To anyone I may have forgotten, I do apologize, but we thank you. So perhaps we can leave as we began. Let us remember, as we return to our work and to our homes, the words of that Bangladeshi farmer watching the floods ruin his life. Everything is crying underwater. And let us resolve to share with the world the knowledge we gained and what we learned at the 3rd Asia-Pacific Broadcasting Union Media Summit on Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction. Thank you.
But please don't go far, Martin. We move on to the adoption of the Dhaka Declaration. Now, for those of you who maybe doubt it, these declarations are not just words. We hold ourselves to account. As I said at the very beginning, not just to talk, but to act. And I have here a copy of the declaration from Krabi. And I'd just like to refer to one clause here, which says that we, the broadcast media, should encourage stakeholders to ask media outlets to assign environmental correspondents or units. Direct personal links are invaluable in raising the profile of all climate change issues. Now, we've only recently discovered, for example, that PTV in Pakistan have indeed established such a unit. And of course, we are hopeful that many more will follow suit. So as I say, not just words, but action also. So as a consequence of the discussions, the information that we've received during the past 2 days, we've assembled the content of the Dhaka Declaration, which you have in front of you. And again, Martin, if I may ask you to just take us through some of the main points of the declaration, please.
Thank you, Russell. Yes, you should have a copy of the draft of the Dhaka Declaration of Commitment in front of you, and this will have us coming up on the screen now. Just to give you a brief outline of what it's all about. As was mentioned, this is going forward to Cancun in Mexico very soon, and it's an agreement which people can follow, and they can receive the voice of the Asia-Pacific region, of the media people in the Asia-Pacific region. I mean, that's very important at international conferences. In the preamble, as you would have read, we talk about the fact that there's overwhelming scientific evidence about the human presence on planet Earth causing changes to the environment and atmosphere. And I think that was just reinforced at the final session when we had where our expert speaker said he was 100% sure there was no question about this at all. We go on to talk about broadcasting having a special responsibility in informing people of DRR issues and so forth. And we do point out that media is the first choice of civil disaster agencies and humanitarian support organizations. Without radio and television and online and without all the other support, they just can't get the message across. And I think we covered that fairly well in the last couple of days. Climate change affects people of all nations, no differentiation, crosses national borders. I've given you examples from my own country fairly recently of major cyclones and so forth. And even as we speak, cyclone is heading towards just north of Fiji, the Fiji Islands. Fiji will be the host for the conference next year. And I did notice on the news that one cyclone has almost just missed Vanuatu, another small island nation is heading for New Zealand, and another cyclone is now coming across just north of Fiji, and we hope it, of course, doesn't hit the Fiji Islands. But it doesn't differentiate between regions and peoples. So we make a commitment. We, the delegates of this conference, we like to thank the summit hosts, of course, the government and ABU. We thank them for initiating this important event. Then we go on to recognize, as we do, the outcomes of previous meetings in Jakarta, Sendai, Krabi in Thailand last year. And then we reinforce the agreements which we know, the international agreements which we discussed in the opening ceremony, the opening session, after the opening ceremony. We reinforce our commitment to the idea of conveying life-saving risk reduction information. I think there's nothing contentious about any of this. And we do say that after a couple of days of important discussions in this city of Dhaka in Bangladesh, we then call upon broadcasters throughout the region, those who are not here, to take note of the outcome and the other summits held to date, because many of the ABU member states are not represented here today, but this will be passed on to them. We support international moves by agencies, whether UN or NGOs, to further disseminate vital data on the subjects of climate change and DRR to the widest possible audiences, and I think that's fairly non-contentious too. Then what we do is we commit ourselves to taking proactive and positive measures in our own communities, in our own organizations, to produce the content, the creative quality radio and TV programs to address these issues, which are ever evolving, changing all the time and moving forward. So we're seeking to encourage people to protect themselves from the potentially catastrophic implications which we've discussed for societies and lifestyles. We do recognize, take cognizance of the human costs which would be involved if inaction occurs, if we don't do something, especially with the United Nations SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, and of course community involvement in disaster management and the need to address poverty alleviation. Then finally, we adopt a whole-of-society approach that ensures that everybody in the community, government, civil society, research institutions, international agencies, and so forth, develop partnerships with broadcasting organizations, with our organizations, to ensure that professional, accurate, and cogent messages are available to us so that we can make the content for public information, education, and the broader global conversation, because we're all part of this one world, this planet Earth. And we conclude by calling upon the hosts of this summit to put this Dhaka Declaration of Commitment before the platform in Cancun, Mexico. And we invite all broadcasters and others to join us in the South Pacific nation of Fiji in 2018 for the 4th Asia-Pacific Broadcasting Union Media Summit on Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction. So if I can ask by acclamation, do we all agree to this? We agree by all parties to the 3rd Summit in Dhaka, Bangladesh on the 11th of May 2017. Can we agree to this by acclamation? Thank you very much. Agreed.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you for approving the declaration. We move now on to the ceremonial part of the closing ceremony, and if I could ask BTV Director General Mr. Harun al-Rashid to come to the stage, along with Javed Motagi, please, and the Solicitor General and Acting Permanent Secretary for Communications in the Government of Fiji, Mr. Sharvada Sharma. If you three could please come to the stage, please. And the flag. Bangladesh last year received the summit flag from Thailand. We now have the ceremony of passing the summit flag from Bangladesh. On to the ABU. So from Mr. Harun al-Rashid to Mr. Javed Mutagi, and on to Mr. Sharvada Sharma from Fiji. The fourth summit, therefore, officially will be held in Fiji. The next part of the ceremony, if I could ask the Honourable Minister, Minister of Information, Hassanul Haq Inu, please to come to the stage. Mr. Martus Ahmed, Secretary, Ministry of Information, and Nazir Uddin Ahmed, Director General of Bangladesh, BETA, please.
Surface is one of the most important parts of our world, influencing the climate of centuries. Now being acknowledged as devastating phenomenon. Our eyes. The Earth's surface is one of the most important parts of our world, influencing the climate of Mother Earth for centuries. While climate change is now being acknowledged as a real global problem, the people of the Pacific have been at the forefront of this devastating phenomena for quite some time. Our isolation and geography, consisting of low-lying islands that support whole communities and countries, rely on our scarce arable land. Traditional healthy food stocks are disappearing as land is swallowed up by the onslaught of rising sea levels. Our people are now increasingly dependent on imported, highly processed and unhealthy foods that's leading to an alarming rise in non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, and heart attacks. Our oceans, traditionally and culturally important to our seafaring people, are increasingly being subjected to pollution and dramatic changes due to climate change affecting our fish stocks, coral reefs, and livelihoods. Across the world, and especially in the Pacific, climate change is altering the lifestyle of thousands of our people. Rising seas, frequent and unprecedented powerful storms, hurricanes and cyclones, crippling floods, devastating droughts, and higher temperatures are already impacting much of our economies. Prime Minister Vorengen Bainimarama, a leading global climate advocate, has stated that 830 of our communities are at risk of being claimed by the ocean. Of this group, 40 are identified as high priority. Fiji has always believed in action and not just mere rhetoric, and that's why our government has led by example by accommodating the sovereign country of the Republic of Kiribati, making available 5,500 acres of our scarce landmass for the real possibility of climate refugees from Kiribati. Fiji was the first country in the world to complete its domestic process to ratify the Paris Agreement, and our Prime Minister has promised to do everything possible to secure the rapid ratification of the Paris Agreement and push for critical global action. If we want to prevent the devastating effects of climate change, the time to act is now. The government of Fiji welcomes you to the 2018 Climate Change Summit in the Fiji Islands.
Your Excellency, the Honorable Minister for the Ministry of Information for the People's Republic of Bangladesh, the Secretary General of the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Bula Vinaka and good afternoon to you all. The Government of the Republic of Fiji wishes to express our special thanks to the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union for the invitation extended to our government and to our media organization to attend the 3rd ABU Media Summit on Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction. And we would also like to sincerely express our gratitude to the government of Bangladesh for their warm hospitality and their welcome. The theme for this summit is indeed a timely one, especially one for the Pacific region, which is spread over thousands of small islands and over an oceanic expanse of 161 million square meters, and is at the coalface of climate change. This is notwithstanding our negligible carbon footprint. To use Fiji as an example of how vulnerable we are to the effects of climate change, last year in February, we experienced Tropical Cyclone Winston, which was the strongest cyclone slash hurricane slash typhoon ever recorded in the southern hemisphere. This unfortunately killed 44 Fijians and wiped out 1/3 of our GDP. You would have seen the images of the destructive impact of TC Winston in the video presentation. The effect of climate change is more so evident for our country as we speak. Even though our traditional cyclone season has ended, Fiji and all Fijians are this week bracing for Tropical Cyclone Ella, which is anticipated to develop into a Category 3 cyclone as it enters into the Fijian waters in the next day or two. It is indeed evident that these erratic and heightened climatic events already pose a devastating effect for small states such as Fiji. This is indeed a global issue which affects our very survival. It requires a concerted global effort between governments, multilateral organizations, civil societies, media organizations, and NGOs. And there are various forums to highlight this immediate threat, such as this summit, this very summit, and of course the upcoming COP23 meeting in November in Germany, when Fiji will formally assume the presidency of COP. The priorities for the Fijian presidency will be to uphold the Kyoto Protocol and expedite work on the Paris Agreement. We intend to focus on reinforcing the climate action agenda that will bring together civil society, NGOs, and the private sector. You all have an important role to play, and we look forward to your support in this global endeavor. To continue further dialogue and action, we warmly welcome you all to Fiji and look forward to hosting you in Fiji for the 4th ABU Summit on Climate Change and Disaster Risk Reduction, as well as the 2018 Pacific Media Partnership Conference in early February 2018. Thank you, Vinaka and Dhanvan.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. And there are now some presentations to be made by Mr. Javad Motangi to our kind hosts from Bangladesh.
Secretary is absent, and this is for yourself, so you can have two responsibilities depending on what you Thank you very much.
If I could now ask the Minister to come forward for the concluding remarks of the summit.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum. I hope your stay in Dhaka is wonderful and you enjoyed the 2 days conference. I could not attend the seminars, but I followed the contents. The contents were very rich, informative. Here with us, the Secretary of the Government of Fiji, and I also thank him. He came all the way from Fiji to Dhaka to receive the flag. Everybody is looking forward to Fiji, one of the great island nations. And as you know that climate change do dangerously affect the island nations. I had been to Maldives once, but not to other island nations. But the subject is very high on the agenda. And the most affected nations will be island nations. Bangladesh is a deltaic country, and as you know that Bangladesh is also is exposed to dangers of climate change. Having said that, let me again reiterate the idea, the theme that media do save lives. Media do save the property. But beyond that, as you know, yesterday I told no country can single-handedly tackle the impact of climate change. So it is a global phenomena. That is why I said that we need to go for a coordinated three-tier action plan: country, regional, and global. In that case, media can come up very positively to propagate that no country can single-handedly face the problems of climate change. So it is a multidimensional collective effort. So here, if the global community and the global leaders do not come forward positively, and if the regional leaders doesn't come and respond positively, then the country cannot do anything alone. So there is an issue needs to be focused more positively. As you know, that the international meetings, whatever is the decision for the last 15 years or 20 years, the rich countries failed to comply with the general consensus in transferring funds to the international body for compensation. As you know, they are the biggest polluters. But apart from that, poverty is also a polluter. So naturally, when the United Nations agreed on the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, this time, holistically, the international body did agree that we'll have to be zero tolerant towards poverty. It should be eradicated. So also, the gender inequality should be totally eradicated, because in the climate change do affect mostly children and women. And when the disaster strikes, then the women and children and the old people are the most vulnerable section of the community. So the gender balance is very important. Eradication of the poverty is very important. But I was wondering that I should share my thoughts about the media, what to focus in the coming years. There are many issues. The fund to be transferred to the international body to be distributed among the nations. The problems of greenhouse gases and other problems. But I think if the people are aware of the danger, if the people are knowledgeable, then whatever is the planning taken up by the country or region or globally will be executed properly. They can participate and execute it properly. So I think we need to create a knowledgeable people who are aware of the dangers of climate change. And for the climate change, there are two approaches. One is adaptation and mitigation. I emphasize on adaptation. If the people can adapt, if the people can have the capacity to adapt to these disaster and climate change problems, then they can reduce many bad effects of the climate change. For that, appropriate technology is very important. So how you invest your money for appropriate technology and how you master appropriate technology in adapting to the changes of climate, that is very important. For adaptation, then media can come forward. Here, the role of the media is very important to make a knowledgeable society, to make the people familiar with the adaptation process. That will save lives, property. For example, in Bangladesh, we have developed salinity, salinity tolerant rice seeds. We have developed flood tolerant rice seeds. We have developed drought tolerant rice seeds. That has increased our production, and that is, we can also share our experience with other nations. So investing in appropriate technology to adapt ourselves to the climate change ill effects, that is very important. So I will request the media people and the broadcasters to look into this subject from the point of view of adaptation, making the people aware and knowledgeable. For that, information is the only key word. So saying these words, I think we are going to Fiji. The island nations' vulnerability will be on the high agenda. Let us for the 1 year examine and read and research on this subject, and let us come up with possible solutions to how to save the island nations from the climate change effects. Thank you very much. Jai Bangla.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. And with those words, we bring the third ABU Media Summit to a close. May I sincerely thank you all for participating. May I say goodbye, safe journey to wherever you may go, and thank you.